If you want to lose your league, draft these players because today we're talking about the worst picks in each round of your fantasy drafts. We're going rounds 1 through 12, the opposite of what we did yesterday where we talked best picks. Today you get the guys that you should avoid. And I do want to clarify up front, we're not saying these are bad players. We're not even saying they're necessarily bad picks. They're just the worst pick in the round that they're in. That's why when you're looking on YouTube and you see Saquon Barkley and Puka Nacua, don't freak out. They're both still top 5 at their position for Ty and I. But Ty, why do you have Puka as the worst pick in round 1?
I just see Puka as having the most risk of anybody in the first round this year. And I find it kind of crazy that we're going to give Christian McCaffrey all the risky talk, but then when it comes to Puka Nacua, no shot, there's no risk. And maybe that's just before I get into the whole Matthew Stafford injury kind of debacle that was kind of reported today. But even with, a fully healthy Matthew Stafford, the team just paid Kyron Williams. That has to mean something. You went out and paid Devontae Adams. So yes, Puka was going to get fed, but were the touchdowns going to follow? That was the initial question. I had faith. My rankings will need to be adjusted after today because he's at my wide receiver 5. He's probably going to be closer to like 7 or 8, and he's going to be outside the first round for me because again of the Matthew Stafford injury with what is it? Aggravated disc? Is that what it is? And that's not good. Mike Wright on the Fantasy Footballers called it a ticking time bomb. That's exactly what this is. And you will hear reports for the rest of training camp. This offense will be just fine with Jimmy G at the helm. Are you sure about that? Are we sure that Jimmy G, the guy that was just in Vegas and had to be cut off of his massive contract because he wasn't performing, is suddenly going to turn around in a McVay offense? Yes, the system can help make things a little easier for him than it was in Vegas, but we can't expect similar production as we had with Stafford if Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback.
For sure. And we talked about it yesterday. There's that tier of that top 6, and Puka feels like maybe he could be in, but if you're playing with Jimmy G for 8 games and you're expected to feed him and Devontae Adams, that ceiling just goes down. So that's really what it comes down to for Puka, is just that added risk. For me, Saquon Barkley, the reason I picked Saquon, again, he's my running back 5. I still think in my projections, he should be a top 5 or a first round pick. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, when I'm taking a guy in those first 6 picks, I view that as the elite tier 1. These are the guys that can't fail. But if I had to pick one to regress, it's going to be Saquon Barkley because of volume and age. Am I saying he falls off a cliff? No. Am I on the lower end of where I think he's going to finish already with my projection? Yes. I still think if you take Saquon Barkley, I don't think it's a bad pick. I'm just saying throughout those first 6 picks, I would just rather have those other 5 players, Jamar Chase, Bijan Robinson, Justin Jefferson, Jahmyr Gibbs, CeeDee Lamb, over Saquon, who's currently going at the 102.
Yeah, we've had plenty of debates about Saquon, and ultimately what it comes down to is the breakaway runs, because he had so many runs of 30 plus, 40 plus yards that ended up in scores, which is great in the time being. Do we get those at the same clip? Do we get those at the same rate? It's to be seen. But I will just say this, as kind of the pro Saquon guy amongst the 3 of us, if there is a running back and a team to have similar fantasy production, I won't call it the same NFL production last year, but if there's a guy that that can repeat the fantasy production just in different ways, it is Saquon, because ultra talent, really good offense, really good offensive line.
Yeah, my biggest concern for Saquon is what happens if this season he has 1,500 yards and 11 touchdowns. That's still a fantastic season. But right there, you're already dropping off 65 fantasy points from where he was at last year. That's my only concern, is he can still have an awesome season and just not quite return on value being the 2nd overall pick because of lack of receiving work. Before we move on to round 2, we just want to remind you guys, we got content pumping out for you constantly. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications, and join the fellowship. We want you around. We want to hear your we want to hear your insight in the comments. So make sure, it's free to do. That's what Lucas always says. And so if you want to join the fellowship, hit that subscribe button. All right, enough blabbing. Round 2, Josh Allen, Jonathan Taylor. I'm going to start with Josh Allen real quick because you're going to look at my ranking if you're on YouTube, and you're going to notice he's your quarterback 2. Why is he a bad pick? Right? You have him ranked for 0.3 points behind Lamar Jackson to be the quarterback 1 overall. Why is this a bad pick? For me, it's just knowing that I could get Lamar Jackson 4 spots later. I could get Jaden Daniels another 10 spots later. I could get Jalen Hurts 20 spots later than Josh Allen, who I all have in a top tier. For me, it's just the second round price tag feels too steep to pay. I understand positional advantage. I understand how good he is, but I think there's at least 3 other guys you can get later who will offer you a similar positional advantage, and you don't have to give up on I like Jonathan Taylor. We'll talk about him in a second. But Trey McBride, Josh Jacobs, a Bucky Irving to get Josh Allen. So that's really what it comes down to me. Again, I think he's still going to be great at the quarterback position. It's just a little early for me to take quarterback in general.
Yeah, it is really just draft theory. Like on the best ball streets, he's kind of a 3rd round pick, and that's a little more justifiable. But kind of in the middle of the second, end of the second here in your redraft leagues, it's a bit steep.
Yeah. He goes to the 210. Right behind him at the 211 goes Jonathan Taylor. Ty. Jonathan Taylor is your Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is, because I'll be honest. Jonathan Taylor is my running back 6 in points per game, or in half PPR. I have him just behind Saquon. I think it's going to be a fantastic year. Why are you out on Jonathan Taylor, and why do you hate him?
I hate Jonathan Taylor. I am the Jonathan Taylor hater. I should probably go change my Twitter bio.
It's because you're a Gophers fan, isn't it? You just can't get over that Wisconsin.
Hey, row the boat, Scott. You might go Gophers. No, my thing with Jonathan Taylor is just that I feel like this offense is so volatile that I have no idea how good or how bad it can get. We saw how bad it got last year. Jonathan Taylor, we saw how good it really was, but in the last 3 weeks of the season when they decided to give him 29, 32, and 34 carries. Granted, he missed 3 games from week 5 to week 7 last year, but first 4 weeks, he was running back 7 in points per game, 1 game having 26 points. So that kind of carries it a little bit. But then in week 8 to 15, when he came back from his injury, running back 27 in points per game. So you can look at this in many different ways, but the way that I look at it is he wasn't likely healthy when he came back from his injury, but the team trusts him enough to give him the ball 30 times a game last 3 weeks of the season, and that's where he came through. Again, the offense, in my opinion, is so volatile where I don't know what to get from this offense that I don't feel comfortable sinking high capital like Jonathan Taylor goes in the second round on a player that is on this team. It's understandable for a Josh Downs and Michael Pittman because they go almost 7 rounds later than Jonathan Taylor. But Jonathan Taylor is so far up the board compared to the rest of his teammates. And with the volatility, I don't know how comfortable I would be taking Jonathan Taylor in the second round. And you could also just look at some of the other running backs that go behind him. Chase Brown, very, very, very near and dear to my heart. You can make a case for Kyron Williams, who's the jury is still out in my opinion, or at least for me with recent contract and all that stuff. Breece Hall is right there too, who is some people's preferred pick. Chase Brown is just my preference. And if I'm going to sink running back or round 2 capital into a running back, it's going to be Chase Brown after that and the guys that go before Jonathan Taylor.
For sure. And I understand, I have no defense for, I think you're overlooking the way that Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones could make this offense look this year. I'm not defending that, but for me, I'm going to continue to bet on the talent of Jonathan Taylor. And that's really what it comes from, is I think he is just such an elite running back that it's going to work out. And what we saw at the end of last season, week 16, 17, 18, 39.8, 26.6, 24.5 in half PPR formats. Like just knowing that that is within the range of outcomes for him, that's huge for me. That's why I'm willing to take that bet here. Like you said, even the first 4 weeks, he was still pretty good before injury. Obviously got hurt. Another concern, but that's concern with every running back at this point. So that's my reason for being in on Jonathan Taylor. However, I understand your concern because it's extremely valid and there really isn't anything you can say against it. Moving into the third round here, we have 2 guys both holding in at this point. And I know for me, and I would assume for you, that's a big reason why they're one of the worst picks. It's just the ramp up period then to get back to, I mean, injury risk is higher. You saw it with Brandon Ayuk last season, held in and ended up getting hurt. Not saying that that's why we have him lower because we think they're going to get hurt. But Ty, is it more than just the fact that Terry's holding in right now? Or are there other factors at play for why you consider him the worst pick in this round?
It is mainly driven from the hold in aspect. And the biggest takeaway is it's time away from training camp. It's time away from a sophomore quarterback that really does need a Terry McLaurin in this offense. The other hole that you can kind of poke in Terry's outlook for this year is that what we got last year was almost the same in terms of volume. 117 targets, 82 catches, when he was averaging somewhere between 120, 130 targets, but he had 13 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So if you think, like, I know that you have said you don't think that Washington takes as full of a step as people kind of project them to this year. That means that we're going to regress, at least in the scoring department. And I have to think that it's going to be 13 touchdowns from Terry McLaurin. Not to say that he's a bad player or that he can't have, 8, 9, 10 touchdowns again. 13 is an outrageous amount of touchdowns for a receiver. And I don't expect that to happen again. And it is really the cherry on top then at that point, again, with the hold in, more time spent away from training camp. There's a ramp up period then for him to get used to. So for a 3rd round draft pick, you're kind of asking a lot of Terry McLaurin to hit the ground running if he hasn't been practicing.
Yeah. Well, and then you bring in Debo, who I'm not saying Debo's taking his spot, but it's just another weapon that's going to be in this offense. Luke McCaffrey's taking a little bit of a step up, right? These are just guys who are going to catch touchdowns on this team. James Cook honestly feels like at this point the Terry McLaurin of running backs. Led the NFL in rushing touchdowns last season. Has a quarterback who's going to score a lot of rushing touchdowns. I mean, Josh Allen is going to be a double-digit rushing touchdown guy. James Cook, like Terry, was never a touchdown guy, and then all of a sudden has a spike season. James Cook had 4 rushing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns the 2 seasons prior. So I don't really see him all of a sudden exploding for 12, 13 rushing touchdowns again. Receiving work is more limited when you have a rushing quarterback like Josh Allen, and then you add in the hold in, you add in the fact that they've discussed how they want to add more Ray Davis into this offense. It's just a lot of things seem to be going against James Cook, where the longer he's out of camp, the less and less likely I'm willing to go. The 310 looks like the spot I want to take him at.
I would agree. And, if there's a silver lining of sorts, it's that the ADP right now for James Cook is kind of baking in the regression that we should see in touchdowns here. But the problem is the longer that we hold out, it's more missed time. But then you look at running backs that go right behind or right after James Cook on sleepers half PPR ADP. That was a tongue twister. Omari Hampton, Alvin Kamara, Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah.
Like I have a lot more confidence in each of those guys, even with Kamara's quarterback situation. Even with Omari Hampton, I mean, he's the one riser in this situation. But Kenneth Walker, even with the injury problems and the new offensive court, Clint Kubiak in Seattle, Chuba Hubbard, do we get really as much usage as we did last year? Like, even with all the holes that you can poke in all those other guys, I could poke more holes in James Cook.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, in 2023, he had 280 total touches. 15, almost 1,600 total yards. It was still the running back 19 in points per game. So that's where we're coming from with this, with James Cook. Round 4, this one gets interesting. We both chose Rashee Rice. And obviously, we've talked about before the season, we were both in on Rashee Rice. We both think he's going to perform, and we both think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. But the fact that Jordan Addison just got a 3-game suspension means at minimum feels like Rice is going to get 4. We could see 6, and I've heard people even say it could be as high as 8. So when you get anywhere from that 4 to 8 range, sinking this 4th round capital, the 406 and Rashee Rice just feels a little bit, it just starts to feel scary. At what point, what would have to happen for you to feel comfortable taking Rice here, knowing that you are this high on him? And how far back, do you think you push him if let's say it's 6 games? Is he a 5th, 6th round pick? Where do you think he falls to?
So right now, he's my wide receiver 34, but I have him projected for a 4-game suspension.
Mm-hmm.
I currently, that projection, I would push him closer to 5th round, 6th round at the worst, because 4 games in the grand scheme of things, 4 games as a 6th round pick isn't terrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially for a guy like Rashee Rice, who I'm expecting as soon as he returns is going to be the number 1 guy in the passing game. If we get anywhere closer to 6 and 8, I might just say it doesn't matter where he goes. I'm not going to take him because I'm not sure if I want to be waiting on Rashee Rice for as long as he is suspended for. So I hate to be kind of the guy that's Jordan Addison's suspension kind of leads into Rashee Rice's suspension because they are 2 completely different, incidents. But I do think the optimism of still keeping him in the 4th round it's too steep. It is way too steep. You're missing out on a lot of good players in this range because you're okay trying to wait out the suspension.
For sure. I mean, you talked about those running backs who are going in this range: Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara, Chuba Hubbard, DJ Moore right there, Devontae Adams, even with the question marks. If it's 6 games, you are going to be really, really, really hurting. I got him at wide receiver 47. I'm projecting him to miss 6 games. Even if he comes back and averages 16 points per game, losing your 4th round pick for a third, almost half the season, right now it's just too rich of a pill to swallow. I just don't want anything to do with it. Again, we really like Rashee Rice. Both of us do. Both of us think he's going to be good. But even once he gets back, right, it's going to take a little bit of time to get game ready, at least a week, maybe 2, maybe longer. So and then also coming off the LCL, injury before. So it's just a lot of things that are kind of amounting to this. Round 5, we've talked about him a ton. It's Zay Flowers. If we were shocked, both of us have wide receiver 39, 1 point apart. I got him for 161.8. Ty Evans for 160.8 and a half PPR. And he currently goes off the board at the 505. The thing with Zay Flowers, I've said this a lot of times, is I think Zay Flowers is an extremely talented wide receiver. I mean, he is fun to watch. He's twitchy. He's good with the ball in his hands. The issue is Lamar Jackson just had an MVP season last year. I mean, Lamar Jackson had about as good of a passing season as you could have. 41 total touchdowns. What was he? Just under 4,000 yards, or did he hit 4,000?
He did have 4,000
yards. And where did Zay Flowers finish, Ty? He finished all the way down as the wide receiver 36 in points per game. Lamar isn't going to have a better passing season. Mark Andrews was already having a down year. Isaiah Likely was, emerging a little bit, but didn't exactly break out. I just don't know what the ceiling looks like for Zay Flowers if Lamar has pretty much hit his passing ceiling. And that's what it comes down to.
The ceiling to me is 30.
Yeah.
That's what it is, because Zay Flowers is not an alpha in this offense. This offense doesn't have an alpha. They prefer to spread the ball around. Now, can you make the argument that Isaiah Likely's injury opens up the door for Zay Flowers to kind of have a hot start to the season, and then before you know it, kind of snowball effect? Sure. But I think it's more likely, kind of what you were pointing out, that Lamar Jackson's 4,100 yards, his career high by 500 yards, his 41 passing touchdowns, his highest since 2019 when he had 36. Those are going to come back down. So this is really a bet on us that we're going to see the passing game regress, not to the point where they are, middle of the pack or anything. I'm going to assume this is the same for you. We still expect Baltimore to really be a top 5 unit in terms of scoring. But if there's one thing that we're going to expect to stay relatively the same, it's the run game. We're going to see some changes in the passing game to where Lamar probably finishes closer to 30 touchdowns than to 40.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, he's had only one other year with over 3,500 passing, yards. He's only had one other year with over 26 passing touchdowns. He's a rushing quarterback. They have Derrick Henry. They don't necessarily need him to throw 41 passing touchdowns either. So Lamar can still be awesome and just not have to produce at the same level that he just did. So that's, all that just to say, we like Zay Flowers, the NFL player for fantasy. It just doesn't quite translate. And now round 6, we got our legal trouble, guys. We got a pair here in Quinshon Judkins and Jordan Addison. I don't know which way we want to start because there's not so fun either way. So I'm going to make you start with why you're out on Jordan Addison in round 6, where he currently goes off the board at the 6'10".
Yeah, 6'10". Good math.
Mm-hmm.
This is very similar to Rashee Rice, where I just don't want to bet on the suspension and the production that he can come back to. In Jordan Addison's situation is a little bit different than Rashee Rice's in the sense that we have a relative unknown with JJ McCarthy at the helm. We still think that this offense can still be really good with JJ McCarthy, but again, that's not a guarantee. It's a projection, right? You have TJ Hawkinson, who is now a full year removed from his ACL and has had a full offseason so far. You still have Justin Jefferson, and this team invested in the run game. We've had the conversation, about will Kevin O'Connell continue to pass the ball as much as he has in the past, even with the investments? And I am firm in my belief that you don't go and spend money on Ryan Kelly and Will Fries and take a first-round guard and Donovan Jackson and then trade for Jordan Mason just to say, now we're going to still throw the ball as much as we do. Mm-hmm. That's a commitment to making the run game work even more. So with Hawkinson in the fold more, the unknown at quarterback with JJ McCarthy, relative unknown, because Skull, right? We got faith, but the relative unknown, and now the run game. Like, it's not the same situation that Jordan Addison was going to be coming back into. So this is a very, very easy pass for me.
Yeah, I was out on Jordan Addison, way out on Jordan Addison before the suspension. I had him at 17 games as my wide receiver 45. He's now down at my wide receiver 57, close to where Ty has him. And the reason is he's probably going to be fighting to be the second option in a team led by a rookie quarterback. That's what it comes down to for me. Quinshon Judkins on the other side, I still have him as my running back 28. Could be suspended. Hasn't been at training camp. So I have to start dropping him now the longer he's out of camp, knowing, hey, they have another 4th-round rookie and Dylan Sampson who could just kind of step right in. And you know what? If Sampson comes out and looks good, him and Ford look all right, they're not going to be motivated to play Quinshon Judkins if he has this legal issue hanging over his head. He could end up on the commissioner's exempt list for all we know and not even see the field this year. He could get a 6-8 game suspension. He could be just fine, but it's just so much unknown that you legitimately could just light your 6th-round pick on fire. I mean, that's the danger with Quinshon Judkins, is he just never sees the field because he doesn't even have a contract signed at this point. Browns could go, this thing's going to happen. We're kind of sick of this reputation we've had. We're just going to cut bait and go with the 2 guys we have. So that's what it comes down with Judkins. It has really nothing to do with what he can do on the field because all the off the field stuff has just overshadowed it so much.
Yeah, I really think it's as simple as that. Like, what are you waiting for with Judkins if you take him in the 6th? Like, maybe that's more so state of the Browns offense than anything else, but like,
exactly.
like
You have no upside either. Yeah.
Right. Like ask yourself, truly, what are you getting
Mhm.
if you take Judkins in the 6th? And
Yeah.
that should that should push you towards like, yeah, I shouldn't really take Judkins here.
Yeah, I mean, we could have a season where it's 5 games of Joe Flacco, 5 games of Dylan Gabriel, 5 games of Shedeur Sanders, and 2 games of Kenny Pickett. I don't see a lot of upside even if he plays all 17 games with a full camp, much less all this extra stuff going on. So that is definitely what it comes down to. But if you do want to risk the pick on either of these 2 players, you can do so over on Underdog Fantasy, and Lucas is going to tell you all about it.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, home of Best Ball Mania 6. There are $15 million in prizes up for grabs, with $2 million going to first place and another $1 million going to second place. Entering is super easy. You join a draft with 11 other people, select your team, and Underdog will automatically generate your highest scoring lineup each week. Essentially, you get all the fun of drafting with zero stress of making the wrong decision on who to start. Underdog hosts a variety of other contests as well, ranging from $3 entries to $500 entries, so there's something for everybody's pocketbook. If you're not on Underdog yet, use the code FELLAS when you sign up, because they'll give you up to $1,000 in bonus credits to play with, and we'll give you our 2025 draft guide for free. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show.
We are back with rounds 7 through 12, and if you thought it got kind of gross yesterday, just wait till today. Especially rounds, I'm going to be honest, round 9 through 12, I had not a lot of conviction on any of these players because there's a lot of grossness there, and it just feels like how much better is it going to get if you move this guy down around. But we'll get into some of those discussions because we do have some interesting players that we're going to have to discuss. But we're going to start with a pair of teammates in round 7. Baker Mayfield, Chris Godwin. I won't spend a ton of time on Baker because we just talked about him 2 episodes ago on the biggest fantasy football cheat codes, when we talked about where he was on Yahoo, and then I think we talked about him a couple episodes before that when we talked about risky players. When we talked about risky players and just the fact that he's going so high, and that really is what it has to do with here for Baker. He's the highest of this tier. As you can see, I still have him as a top 10 quarterback. I still think he's going to be pretty good for fantasy, but you're just taking him, in the 7th round over a ton of guys who I think can outperform. I mean, Calvin Ridley, I like Rome Odunze, Caleb Johnson, Tony Pollard, even in this range. I think Travis Kelce. I just think there's enough guys here that I'm like, I'm going to pump the brakes on Baker and just wait another 2 rounds at quarterback for a guy who's going to produce the same way.
Yeah, Baker's at the tier of what feels like everyone else at quarterback, right? Like you've got the top guys. Then it's Baker and Mahomes that are kind of the first 2 guys after the top 5, but they are the first 2 guys of the everyone else category. And we talked about what is it, round 11, where we talked about Drake May and Justin Fields yesterday. There are like 3 other quarterbacks that it's like that's a what, 4-round difference. It's draft strategy completely.
And now you got his teammate, Chris Godwin, who obviously has the injury stuff. Is that really where you're coming from on this? Or is there, again, like Rice, like Addison, other factors that kind of play into why you're a little lower on Godwin?
This one really is just the unpredictability of the Chris Godwin return. And I'm starting to get more and more suspicious of exactly what kind of Chris Godwin we're going to get when he comes back. I think it's certainly optimistic to think that as soon as Chris Godwin comes back, he's going to be the same old Chris Godwin. Everything that has been said and reported about his recovery tells me that there's at least going to be a ramp up period. I'm just kind of worried that it's not going to be the same Chris Godwin that when we come back. Can he still get a decent amount of targets in the offense? Totally. Chris Godwin is one of the top playmakers on that offense. Again, I'm just more so concerned that the Chris Godwin that we got last year, right, that was top 5 in points per game when he was healthy. We're not going to get that type of Chris Godwin. Not from a production standpoint, but from athletic standpoint, Chris Godwin.
For sure. And, they just invested in a 1st round wide receiver in Emeka Ibuka. So they're not going to rush him back. right? They're going to make sure they take their time with Godwin. Obviously, they did invest in him this offseason, so they at least believe he's going to be back at some point in some fashion. They're planning on using him in the offense, so that gives you a little bit of hope. But I agree, it's most are skeptical if he does return for week 1, and then expect a major dip for a while coming back. So yeah, it sucks because Chris Godwin's one of our favorite players. He's so much fun to watch. When he is healthy, he is good for fantasy football, but obviously it's just hard to play that game with the injury. Next, we have Jonnu Smith, and I think we can keep this one short and sweet. Is this anything more than Sleeper just hasn't adapted to the fact that he is a Pittsburgh Steeler, and we just are not moving him down the board fast enough? Like, is there really anything more than that, or is that kind of what you think is going on here?
No, that's really about it. Just some of the tight ends that go right after Jonnu Smith: David Njoku, Tyler Warren, Tucker Kraft, Colson Loveland, Jake Ferguson, Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, I mean,
there's really no reason.
It stuck out like a sore thumb when we were looking at this of like, ooh, Jonnu shouldn't be here because he was, tight end 6 when he was with Miami, ADP wise earlier in the summer, and we're just slowly moving him down. I expect as we get further into August, he will not be here, and if he is, do not click on his name because as much as Arthur Smith likes to use tight ends, they're never great for fantasy, and he's sharing with Pat Freiermuth at this point on an offense we don't project to be very good.
Yep.
There's just not a lot working for him over there in Pittsburgh. So unless you got anything else, I think we're probably good to move on here with Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, the tight end 15 projection, that's going to be falling here.
Yeah.
Like I've kind of held out the optimism that it's like, well, besides DK Metcalf, who else is it? And I'm just like, actually, it might just be DK. It might just be DK.
For sure. Round 9 now. Again, Ty, you're sticking with the theme, and I really can't blame you. Suspensions, injury, holding. I mean, that's why you're knocking these guys down. Puka with Stafford, Terry McLaurin holding in, Rashee Rice suspended, Jordan Addison suspended, Chris Godwin hurt. Now you got Brandon Ayuk who's coming off the injury, and you have him down deep in those rankings. Is that just you think he's going to miss a lot of time at the beginning of the season? Is that where you're coming from with that one?
I've got him projected to miss 7 games.
Okay, so yeah, a very considerable amount of time.
And because he, if I'm not mistaken, he tore his ACL in week 7. So roughly a year after, which is kind of what I expect the timeline to be. Then on top of that, you're going to have a ramp up period with Brandon Ayuk. Yeah. And if that's 4 games, I'm sorry, that's 11 games out of a 17 game season. So you're only going to get really my projection and my assumption, 6 games. Really of a decent Brandon Ayuk, and I like 84 total points is what I've got him projected at, but across 6 games, it's not half bad. No. But you got to wait so long that, in my opinion, I feel like Brandon Ayuk, he's going to get taken in this range in drafts, and the team that drafts him is ultimately going to drop him because they're like, I'm getting desperate now. Like I need some production from somebody else. So maybe he's a better waiver ad at some point then. But again, with no timetable for his return, I'm expecting a lengthy kind of recovery and return for Ayuk.
Yeah, and if you have a healthy CMC, a healthy George Kittle, there's no guarantee he's going to be your wide receiver 1 even, right? With Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings coming back this season. So there's just a lot that goes into it that I really can't fault you. Probably would have been my pick. I went with Justin Herbert. This is similar to Baker Mayfield that we talked 2 rounds before. And really it's just, you said it, Ty. You look at round 11 and you just look at all those quarterbacks who are right there. Caleb Williams, Dak Prescott, Justin Fields, Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, Drake May. It's, I just don't know if I can justify taking him a full round earlier when he hasn't been a top 10 quarterback in the last 3 seasons.
Yeah, this one hurts because I've got him projected to be a top 10 guy, but you do just have to call it out that it is a bit mispriced here on Sleeper. Again, going off of Sleeper's ADP, and you did say, right, I want to emphasize this because I think this is truly what it is not saying that we think that Justin Herbert is a bad pick. This is just a pure draft strategy of just look who goes right after, right? And continue to build up your team at other positions. Unless like you've got a Lat McConkey, then I can kind of understand it, but it's a very small box that you need to kind of fit into in order to like really justify Herbert's price tag over some of the other guys right after him.
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to. Round 10 then. This one hurts for me to see. I don't know if I can blame you on Keon Coleman. I'm trying to be in on Keon. The biggest thing for me, he has a null, and just how young he is. There truly are only two wide receivers in the draft who are younger than Keon Coleman this season. So him and Neighbors were still younger than every other wide receiver but two. That's why I'm a little bit in on him, but you can give the people the negative view because I know there is definitely one out there.
Well, where do I start?
Exactly.
This team is expecting Keon Coleman to be more involved, to take a step going into this year, but he is coming off a year where he had just 30 catches. Like, in order for, in my opinion, for him to return value and where he's going in drafts, and that's saying something because this is round 11, right? This is round 11, round 10. Like it is, we're asking a lot for a guy that didn't really do a whole lot. And when he did play last year, he didn't really show anything. He really showed that he's a guy that needs some developing, and that's not a bad thing. I just feel like this year with Keon, we're just a year too early. The Khalil Shakir ankle injury, high ankle sprain, does, maybe give you some optimism, but the team went out and signed Josh Palmer. Like the Josh Palmer signing, in my opinion, is more indicative of Keon Coleman than anything else here with this offense.
Yeah. I guess I like Keon Coleman just for an upside shot of if it does start to pan out this season and he does get to be Josh Allen's wide receiver one. But I do understand there's still a lot of downside. There's still the fact that it is a long shot for him to get there. More than likely, they're going to be a Raven-esque team where they just don't have wide receiver one. They spread the ball around. Josh Allen's the threat. He's the only threat that you really have to worry about. I went with the Ibuka here, and it's really just, I'm looking at it. I'm going, what is truly the upside with him, with Mike Evans, with Godwin returning, the fact they have Jalen McMillan, Baker, if he regresses a little bit, it throws 28 touchdowns, which is still a phenomenal season instead of 40. That's where I'm coming from with it. He was also my lowest rated wide receiver in this range, so that helps a little bit. I just kind of went off rankings. I say it's the worst in this round. I don't hate the pick. Like if you take him here, I don't think it's a bad pick. I was just trying to find one I didn't like, and honestly, looking at round 10, I was sitting there going, I kind of like everybody in this range. So he was just kind of the worst of a decent. And I know other people might look at this range and go, this range sucks. And I'm kind of like, I kind of like a lot of names in here. And Ty, I know you're looking at Michael Pittman too, and you're like, that wasn't an easy layup, but I'm a Michael Pittman guy.
Well, you have Keon Coleman projected ahead of Emeka Ibuka?
I do, yes.
Oh, that's that's interesting.
Call my shot here.
That is certainly calling your shot. Maybe this is because like I'm out on Godwin that I would be more in on Emeka Ibuka, but I think I think Ibuka can stay in this offense, and maybe I'm drinking too much of the training camp Kool-Aid here, but everything that you're hearing is that Ibuka can be an immediate contributor. So maybe your optimism that you have for Keon Coleman is the optimism I have for Emeka Ibuka.
Definitely could be. However, this rookie, Trey Harris, we don't seem to have a ton of optimism for. For me, it wasn't a bad pick until honestly today it was confirmed Keenan Allen's on this team, because he signed for $8 million. It's not like they just got him on, for nothing. And Keenan Allen outpaced all other Bears wide receivers from week 11 on last year in targets. Like, it's not like we're talking about we're not talking about Mike Williams anymore, who is retiring. We're talking about Keenan Allen, who is still producing last year, albeit, at the slowest pace since we've seen since Anquan Bolden. But, he still is finding his way, which means Ladd's going to play more on the outside, because you're not putting Keenan Allen on the outside. Keenan Allen is strictly a slot guy at this point in his career. You're going to move Ladd to the outside, and now he's fighting with Quentin Johnson. He's fighting with KLS. I don't even remember. What's his full name?
Keandre Lambert
There you
Smith.
go. I see. That's what I thought it was Keandre, but I was like, I'm gonna just butcher that. I'm just gonna not say it all loud. So he's just fighting with so much more to get on the field for a team that wants to run the ball. That's what it comes down to me. I don't know if you have anything more to add on Trey Harris.
You may not think that Keenan Allen returning and playing with Justin Herbert means anything, but Keenan Allen does have years with 140 plus targets with Justin Herbert under his belt. Not saying that's what he's going to get, but there's a rapport there that Trey Harris doesn't have. The Keenan Allen signing, just like how I was saying how the Josh Palmer signing is more indicative of where they feel with Keon Coleman. The Keenan Allen signing, in my opinion, is more about how they feel about Trey Harris and Quentin Johnson, where they can't fully rely on Quentin Johnston. They like the guy, but they can't fully rely on him, and they think that Trey Harris is going to need at least a little bit of time to develop. So you need a guy that can step in and I don't want to say take some of the load off of Ladd McConkey, but not have defenses really like targeting Ladd McConkey as the only guy there. So again, Trey Harris, he's my wide receiver 51 in projections. That's going to be going down just because I think it's his playing time is going to be more sporadic now with Keenan Allen in the mix.
Yeah, and you might not like Keenan Allen. You might say, oh, he's washed. 2023 had 150 targets. You can say, well, that was 2 seasons ago. Last year he had 121 with Rome Odunze and DJ Moore on that team.
On a really bad offense.
So he's going to he's going to get targets. He might push 100 targets this season, which would really screw with Trey Harris, Quentin John, everybody else that's not named Ladd McConkey on this team.
Yeah. True.
And finally, prepare yourself because this is gross. Round 12. We won't spend a lot of time on this because you don't want to pick these guys anyways. Rico Dowdle, Marvin Mims. Ty, give us your thoughts on why we shouldn't like Marvin Mims in round 12 here.
Yeah, maybe I'm discrediting him a little too much here for the wide receiver 77 after being the wide receiver 57 last year. But for 39 catches and having 6 touchdowns on those, I'm not expecting a jump in volume for Marvin Mims this year. I think we do need to remember 4 of Marvin Mims' 6 touchdowns came in the last 2 weeks of the season. So tell me what the upside is for Marvin Mims. Yeah. And I swear if somebody says he was top 5 in yards per route run, I'm going to kick you out of the comments because that's just such a lazy argument.
Yeah, it was all design plays. You got to assume there's a reason they brought in a guy like RJ Harvey, who's now 5th on the depth chart. Oh my gosh, we got to freak out. Please don't freak out about that. That is Sean Payton's way of trolling the fantasy community.
Correct.
By putting him 5th. There is nothing more to that. So do not get upset about that. But yeah, Evan Ingram, RJ Harvey in town, they're not just going to use design plays from Marvin Mims. That's going to go away. So I don't hate that. But honestly, round 12, it's a lot of gross names. And so we could probably make the case for anybody here. I went with Rico Dowdle, thinking he's not going to have standalone value with Chuba Hubbard. Even if Hubbard goes down, this isn't like Carolina we're projecting to take a step forward as an offense. That doesn't mean I think they're going to be a top 15 offense. That means I think hopefully they can crack top 20, right? And they're not bottom 3. That's the step forward we're talking about. So if Chuba Hubbard went down with injury, Rico Dowdle's still not even like a handcuff I'm like, yes, I need on my team. So that's what it comes down to for me. Of I understand you want your handcuffs at this point, but I don't even think he's a great handcuff.
Maybe I've got a little more optimism for Rico Dowdle.
You're a Chuba guy too, so you do believe in this Carolina offense.
I am more in on this Carolina offense than the other fellows here. I do. If there is a reason, or if I had to give my best guess as to why they brought in Rico Dowdle, it's because they think that Rico Dowdle can contribute more in the passing game than Chuba Hubbard can. Because Chuba Hubbard, he only put up 4 yards per reception last year. That was the lowest of a top 15 running back on a per game basis since 2008. So the guy was super inefficient with the passing volume. So that, again, if I had to give my best guess, I think it's because they think Rico can contribute in the passing game. And if something happens to Chuba, cool. Then you've got, it's the handcuff. But I think the only case I can give for some optimism is potential receiving work. And I'm just not sure that's even a reality.
Yep, definitely. And if you don't believe me that the round 12 names are gross, go look it up because they are not exactly pretty. So we were making cases on, you can make a case for any of these guys. But that wraps it up for us today. We will be back next week with 3 more episodes. I'm not 100% sure what they are, but they are going to be awesome. Don't you worry. Lucas,
that's kind of the signature sign off. We got more episodes coming. Don't know what they are, but they're going to be bangers.
They will be. Lucas will be back next week. If you want to follow us, Tyler's at Tyler_Plath on the X. I am Kamla FFF. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, Fantasy Football Fellas. We're also Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok and Facebook, Fantasy Football Fellas Shorts on YouTube, the FFLs on Instagram, and FFLs on the X for our main page. We will see you next week. Deuces.